Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Dignified slaves of great God, we are seated here after having completed the worship required by us today, signifying the end of the Ramadan month fasting, one of the two festivals granted by Him. While mentioning in the Quran he says, Li tu Kabiru, the objective of celebrating this festival, the Almighty says is to glorify Him, for having led us in the straight path in this world, a privilege not given to any other people. We have been gifted with this unique goodness from the Almighty, and is the reason to glorify Him because no other community has been bestowed with this privilege and hence the requirement to glorify the great God at this occasion. The objective of celebrating this festival is to glorify the great God, who is the greatest, and for having led us in the right path all this while in this world. When the Almighty says in the Quran to glorify Him because He has guided us in the right path, we are yet to take cognizance of the right path. We erroneously comprehend the right path as donning a cap, wearing a particular fashion dress, christening ourselves with an Arabic name etc. This kind of activity or behavior in terms of appearance and fashion does not constitute the right path as mentioned in the Quran. The right path is fundamentally the belief that life in the hereafter world is the best and we need to work towards achieving the same. As far as we Muslims are concerned, the ultimate victory lies in our status in the hereafter world. The speciality in Islamic belief lies in our steadfastness in adhering to the tenets of Islam, without compromising Islamic values. We should never ever sulk in the face of any difficulties we may encounter, and at the same time not get carried away by our worldly gains. This world is ephemeral. The more we lead a sincere and honest life as per Islamic beliefs in this world, the more we stand to be victorious in the hereafter world which is eternal. For instance, observing fast in the entire month of Ramadan is done with the belief that God Almighty will reward us in the hereafter, and that He has been watching us every second of our life during this month and forever, despite our chances to violate the rules during fasting. When we ponder the reason for us to observe all kinds of worship as required by Islam, it is the belief that we are to be rewarded in the hereafter world. The arrival of one to this kind of a conclusion signifies that he had been rightly guided by the Almighty. And any act by a person without belief in the hereafter is a waste of exercise. Only we have been awarded this belief about the hereafter by the Almighty, as a result of which we are able to withstand the untold miseries that confront us in this world. Just because we happen to be minorities we are being subjected to innumerable atrocities and miseries in this country, but we still remain steadfast in our belief in Islam and tolerate all the injustices meted out to us. The Almighty has given us the resolve and the belief only to us to brush aside all the difficulties in our life with expectations in the hereafter world. And also with the sole objective of answering with ease the Almighty's questions regarding our conduct while in this world. With this being our target, we need to bear in mind, the worship we perform reflects this attitude. And for this reason we are being required to glorify the great God. To glorify the great God, the utmost requisite is the belief that the hereafter life is desirable when compared to life in this world. Without this conviction a worship performed is of no use at all. And if you believe fasting is a good exercise regime for the betterment of your body structure, and start observing the Ramadan fast, the benefits from the great God would never reach you, because this worship of fasting in the month of Ramadan should be based entirely on the faith and belief that you get rewarded from the Almighty for your performance during the month of Ramadan. And we continue to remain in the Islamic faith because of this conviction and steadfastness in our belief in Islam. But we perform all our worship without absolute and steadfast conviction in our faith. Allah cites in the Quran the example, Quran verse, of the wife of Pharaoh as an embodiment of steadfast faith in the great God. Pharaoh was a tyrant who tormented his subjects because of their faith in monotheism. It was during the same time when Prophet Musa was spreading the word of God and propagating Islam among the people of that time. Pharaoh was also claiming he was God himself. But the queen of the throne at that time, his wife, openly declares he is not God, neither the stones nor the idols he worships. And the only God is the one who created him and her, accepts the teachings of Prophet Musa and comes into the fold of the true religion. She does this not discreetly but openly. Here the significance is in the fact that when the whole people in the whole kingdom is already obeying and bowing down to the wishes, commandments, and fancies of the ruler, she openly declares the true ideology regarding her spiritual belief, and defies his false beliefs, that too being the queen of the throne, and comes into the fold of the right path. She comes into the fold of true religion immaterial of the consequences like torture and torment that would follow. She is defying him, when the whole country is treating him as God, and obeying his commands and orders. The whole country is functioning as per his expectations. The consequences of the queen disobeying the king would entail devastating results. But the queen, in spite of the consequences of her actions, chooses the true religion, at the risk of losing all the material benefits and luxuries of the world. Arabic, she accepts Islam as her way of life. Allah cites in the Quran Pharaoh's wife as an example of grit, determination and steadfast in the belief of monotheism, whereby Allah says these kind of trials and tribulations men undergo is the litmus test to measure the strength of faith in them towards the right path. The significance of this verse in the Quran is, Allah cites the example of a woman, in throwing a gauntlet to measure the faith in people at times of tribulations, and if the same kind of response like that of the queen is exhibited by others, means they are in the right path. And she is not ready to forsake her ideology for the material benefits of this world. She is ready to give up the benefits and luxuries of the palace in which was living in lieu of a palace in the hereafter. And she pleaded with the Almighty to keep the Pharaoh away from her, and also to protect her from the hardships and torments of the tyrant and also to protect her from the perpetrators of injustice. It is at this juncture that Allah compares people who are dire in straits when subjected to difficulties and torments with regard to their faith in the monotheistic religion, with the steadfast faith of the queen in monotheism. She totally rejects the material benefits of this world when the choice is between the hereafter and the present world. She stands as a perfect example of a true believer when she pleads with God seeking protection from the perpetrators of injustice. And the Almighty says if one claims to be a true follower of the true religion, he or she needs to be steadfast in the belief in the faith of the true religion, like this queen, who forsook all the pleasures and luxuries of this world for the benefits in the hereafter. And she considered all the worldly pleasures in this world including the royal life she experienced in the palace a non-entity, compared to the benefits in the hereafter world. She outrightly rejects all pleasures and riches of this world to that of the comforts and good life in the hereafter. She continues to tolerate and experience all kinds of torments and hardships for the sake of her belief in the hereafter. This act and her belief in the hereafter is cited in the Quran as an example to be followed by the faithful in this world. She pleaded with the Almighty for a better palace in the hereafter compared to the one in this world. And the Almighty points out in the verses of the Quran, her way of life is the norm to be followed by those to be called as the ones in the right path. Signifying the fact that the Almighty promises a better life for those who withstand the torments and difficulties while following the right path. This has to be done with the belief that a reward is awaiting in the hereafter. Anyone following this kind of life is said to be in the footsteps of the Queen and Wife of Fire. This can be found to be true from the annals of history. But people question whether this kind of an attitude and behavior in people is possible in today's world. This skepticism expressed by people at present is natural given the state of affairs of Muslims in general. But the fact is, it is happening right in our present times. We witness the steadfastness in the ideology of the straight path in the case of Palestinians. In Palestine, a group consisting of like-minded brothers is resisting the inhuman and beastly behavior of a superpower and fighting injustices heaped upon their people. They are fighting not against one superpower but many at the same time. The brothers belonging to the resistance group Hamas are fighting world powers who easily subdued many organized countries with organized governments. These powers, namely Israel, US, Britain, very easily can overpower any country in the world with their might, and they have done as can be seen in the case of Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, Guatemala, etc. They subdued the rulers of these countries with the help of their stooges in those countries. They are huge in terms of military power, fighter aircraft, army, bombs and bomber aircrafts, along with unlimited money power. But Hamas is a small group of people with steadfast faith in the ideology of monotheism and straight path. It is with this group the many powers of the world are attempting to run over, but in vain. Hamas does not have a regular government, nor an army, nor fighter crafts, nor bombs, nor bomber aircrafts. This group is standing against a huge bunch of perpetrators of injustice around the world. This bunch of warmongers torture and torment the Palestinian civilians by bombing their residences, killing their women and children, preventing food, water, and medicines from reaching them. These inhuman forces have killed more than 37,000 civilians as on date in a matter of 188 days. and have wounded more than 50,000 civilians. But these perpetrators of war crimes, these cowards unable to face the brave resistance fighters who are fighting for the rights of the people of their motherland, are bombing residential buildings, places of worship, schools, hospitals, shelters, and have demolished and razed to the ground more than 80% of the residences where these people lived. Had the same situation been faced by some other population in some other part of the world, they would have given up all kinds of hopes and surrendered to the marauding forces by giving up all their rights and sovereignty. Over and above the heinous act of destroying their places of living, worshipping, sheltering, hospitals, and refugee camps, these beasts cut off the people's access to food, water, electricity, petrol, and all other fundamental needs to survive, making their very existence questionable. Even the hospitals and doctors are not spared by these savages who boast of their high living standards in their countries, and also of their civilizations. The Palestinians are unable to afford 1 square meal a day because of the blockade, bombings, and ground invasion by these inhuman armed forces armed up to their teeth, aided by their Western partners. In spite of all the injustices, atrocities, assaults, attacks on their women, children, elders, being heaped on them, they withstand and face the hardships. Can we imagine a situation where Palestinians are observing their Ramadan fast with a glass of water and are surviving with plain water that is scarce outside the fasting time? With all these hardships and difficulties, the Palestinians are steadfast in their belief in the one and only God, that made their enemies back off. Almighty Allah, Master of all words, is the schemer of all such situations. Just 2 days ago the entire army of the beasts have been called back by their government to their barracks. We need to ponder over the reasons for all the happenings, where an entire army assisted and manned by the strategists of the superpowers of the world are vanquished by a small group people bound together by brotherhood ties to foster a way of life based on the ideology of straight path. Any one community that does not have the conviction similar to that of Palestinians in facing all these kinds of tribulations can be easily declared as the one that is devoid of steadfastness exhibited by the wife of fire. Hamas of our contemporary times is similar in stature as the wife of fire of her times, in challenging the superpowers and Israel in remaining steadfast against the injustices perpetrated on the Palestinians. This kind of stand against injustice and inhuman behavior by misguided people can hardly be found in the history of Islam in the past 1445 years. Thus, the question put forward by some, whether the same kind sticking onto the ideology of Islam as that of the wife of fire, is feasible in today's world has been proved by the Palestinians and Hamas. Palestinians and brothers of the resistance group Hamas are humans like us. They are also subject to all kinds of worldly pleasures and disturbances like the rest of us. They also experience hunger, another normal human trait. Despite possessing all the normal human traits, they keep on losing, every day for the past 188 days, their shelter, their hospitals, their doctors, their nurses, their children, their womenfolk, their elders, their residences, their places of worship, their near and dear, their sovereignty, their rights, their livelihood, their refugee camps, and all other necessities of living a normal life. All this right under the nose of the United Nations and the International Court of Justice, and is done without any restrictions by anyone whosoever, to the extent, the perpetrator being named as a war crimes country. The people who previously supported these beastly beings are beginning to realize the brutality and inhuman behavior by the government of Israel and have begun protesting all over. Despite all the torments and tribulations faced by the Palestinians, we witness right in front of our eyes the steadfastness in them in holding Islamic principles of life. Today we are celebrating the Ramadan festival, we are dressed in the best of our clothes, and we are about to have a festive meal. But when compared to the festivity in the land of Palestine, the people do not enjoy 1/1000th of what we do today. Still they remain as Muslims facing all the hardships and difficulties, observe the Ramadan fasts, with the barest minimum food even to end the fast. They conducted worship all through the night in the open, since the masjids all over have been razed to the ground by the Zionists. But they stood firm and steady in their belief. We witness this right in our days, proving the fact that men and women similar to Fire's wife do exist in our times. The great Lord has shown us this, as can be seen in the case of Palestinians and Hamas at present. We cannot vouch whether we have the same conviction regarding the same faith we are in as them. At the same time, though we see people similar to Fire's wife in the history of Islam, existing now, We are also witness to hypocrites of our times like the ones that existed at the time of Prophet Muhammad. They are the present ruling cliques of Arab countries. While Hamas, the resistant group, and the hapless citizens of Palestinians are facing all the brutalities and untold hardships from the Zionist entities, these Arab ruling cliques do not even have the courage to order the Zionist entity to remove the blockade of food convoys to reach the Palestinians. Each and every Arab ruling family in the Middle East except Iran are representatives of Shaitan, and are scared to question the Zionists, because of their love for worldly pleasures and riches they are enjoying might have to be given up in case there is a retaliation from the West if the Zionists are questioned. These Arabs do not question the Zionists for blocking the food aid to the Palestinians, they help the Zionists to get food for themselves. All the Arab regimes from Saudi Arabia to UAE, are the scoundrels who help Zionists try to decimate the Palestinians and the Hamas movement. The Arabs do not bother about the hunger and torments undergone by the hapless Palestinians, but are concerned by the food needs of Zionists. We find the double standards maintained by the Arab rulers in the case of Muslims, and stop short of releasing formal statements. Had these Arab countries reacted the right way, the US would not dare help Israel. Had the Arab countries threatened to remove all US Air Force bases from their respective countries, would the US dare such atrocities on the Palestinians? The Arabs did not dare to initiate any countermeasures. On the contrary, these Arabs have renewed their permission to host the US forces beginning with Saudi Arabia to Qatar except Iran, an archenemy of the US. These Arab countries are not bothered about the sufferings of the Palestinians and neither do they care about the reasons they are experiencing all the torments heaped on them. Are the Palestinians being subjected to all the horrors because of their quest for power in this world, or luxuries and riches of the world? No, they are fighting against forces that have occupied their country and turned them into second-class citizens. But the Arabs, instead of supporting the Palestinians, refuse to help them even with their food needs. Without any financial or arms assistance, these Arabs could at the least provide food for the hapless public, but even at this end they enact a drama by joining the Israelis and the Western countries in providing a token assistance by dropping a few plane loads of food, lest the whole Muslim world feel bitter about them, because food cannot be provided to the Palestinians without the concurrence of Israel and the West. Even the food dropped by planes is very meager, where the demand is around 500 to 600 trucks loads on a daily basis for the population of 240,000 and trapped by the beastly Israeli army and air force. Even the 600 truckloads of food material on a daily basis would suffice them just one square meal a day. Thus we can witness the two faces of the Arab rulers, on the one side their munafirkness in supporting Israel in their illegal occupation of Palestine and pretending to help Palestinians on the other. The Palestinians do not have the support of anyone at this juncture except the great God on their side. Because without the grace of Almighty Allah it is extremely impossible to withstand the onslaught of these beasts in human form for the last 188 days. Because we have seen in the past in Iraq, Saddam Hussein, who called himself a great superhero, was trounced by these forces, the same so-called superpowers could not subdue the Afghans, and now it turns out that they are facing a second humiliating defeat at the hands of a small group of believers in one God, who have neither an organized army, a government, an air force, or naval forces. They are equipped only with their Iman, unflinching steadfast trust on the monotheistic God. The occupying forces have eliminated the three sons of the Palestinian leader, but this could not deter him from carrying on his commitment to his steadfast belief on the straight path. But we need to self-introspect ourselves whether we are equipped with the same kind steadfast belief in the straight path of the great God. We sulk in the face of small inconveniences by questioning ourselves whether it is worth remaining a Muslim and face all the harsh consequences. This kind of thought and behavior in our life reflects the lessons we have learned, or rather not from the Quran. We have not realized that Allah is Almighty and He is the Master of all the worlds, and that everything we do in the world is to satisfy only Him. If our thoughts and actions are towards fulfilling such yearnings, we turn out to be the victorious ones in the hereafter. This kind of a yearning needs to be there in all of us, even if there are no trials and tribulations in our everyday life. Immaterial of any kind of hardships, torments, difficulties, atrocities, that requires you to give up Islam and your belief in one God should not be heeded too. You should take an undertaking to yourself today, that you will never ever give in to the thought of forsaking the religion of straight path in the face of all hardships, be it financial, hunger, danger to your life, etc., rather than give up all kinds of worldly needs and luxuries for the sake of Islam. This is the lesson that we need to learn from the happenings that are taking place right in front of our eyes for the past 6 months rather than from the annals of history.